asymmetrical face. And I was like, oh, is that why?
Absolutely.
Hello. Hello. And tell it how it is. Your teeth are not the problem, it's your face, just so you know. And then... Oh! Weird.
I love Liz. Oh my God, yeah. I'm gonna move somehow. Let's reconfigure here. Oh God.
I crack me up every single time. Hello, everybody. I'm Ann Pirvu.
And I'm Melissa Melottey, and welcome to Tea Time
With Ann and Mel, you know, the talk show on nurturing relationships. And what do we always do? Becoming self-aware. Melissa's like, oh no. We lost Melissa. Can everyone hear Melissa, or is it just me? Oh no.
Oh no! Right when we go live. What is this shit?
We literally lost Melissa for like 5 seconds, and it was like, the talk show on nurturing relationships and becoming self-aware, right? And you were like, and I was like, oh crap.
Oh no! So I said, brew your favorite tea, and let's jump right into it.
Yeah, guys. You know why? Because today we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and a really fun topic, because we're both Geminis, Melissa and I.
Yeah.
And we love what? Communication. We are natural communicators. You're like, no.
Not at all. I hate talking.
I am fascinated by communications, various forms of communication. And of course, on Tea Time, where we talk all about relationships, we're all about effective communication so that we don't talk at each other, but with each other. Boom! And the second part of that is going to be talking about triggers and me making an idiot of myself. It's great.
Well, I always do. It's your turn, so it's all good.
So yeah, literally, grab yourself a cup of tea because it is going to get fun. It's going to get juicy. And it's going to get hot.
Already hot.
You know. Sorry, guys. I don't know what that is. Maybe I've had way too much of my tea today. What kind of tea are you having, Melissa?
I am having, well, okay, guys. So today I am so prepared with my tea. You want to know why? Because not only do I have my special orange pico, you know, English breakfast, hot tea with almond milk, but just wait. I also have iced tea. That's right, iced Earl Grey tea with almond milk. Just in case I'm feeling like, oh my God, it's too hot in here. Gotta have something cold. Oh, it's too cold. I don't know why I'm still doing this. It's too cold. Need something hot. I can just switch it up, you know? So you gotta have choices.
100%. It's a bit of a heat, guys, by the way. So yes, you are hot both literally and figuratively. I think that's what I'm sort of feeling today. It's like, damn, it's hot in here.
Yeah. I actually did my face and hair today. What? It's crazy.
Fantastic. Beautiful. And wanting to say hello to all of our beautiful viewers, whether you're joining us on Ann Mel Tea Time on Facebook Live or PetMag, twitch.tv/thepetmag. Welcome. We love having you. And not only that, but both Melissa and I asked the question, of course, which we do every episode, but we asked the question on our Instagram accounts. How do you effectively communicate, and various variations of that, and what you think tips and tricks are, because today we're going to be talking about one of our favorite topics.
Yeah.
Look in the house, the beautiful Lucy Len from Germany. Mwah.
Welcome, darling.
Hello, darling.
So yeah, girl. Well, all I was going to say is, like, I think maybe we should start off with talking about what triggers are, because some people might not know, right?
Absolutely. Start us off, Melissa, and then what we'll do in a quick second, right after that, which will set us up for the topic. We're gonna share some information that you guys, some of the answers that you guys have sent us. about relationships and triggers. So Melissa, what the heck are triggers? What are we talking about?
Well, okay, Anne, thanks for asking. A trigger, so I'm going to just actually read the definition of a trigger just to be the most, precise and accurate and clear. So a trigger is something that sets off a memory tape or flashback, transporting the person back to the event of his or her original trauma. So triggers are very personal. Different things trigger different people. The survivor may begin to avoid situations and stimuli that she/he thinks triggered the flashback. Okay, so often when we get into arguments with people, we in some way become triggered, and we're triggered based off of our beliefs. So we're kind of brought back into time based off of, a belief that was originally created from some kind of trauma that had happened to us. So Ann and I have talked about this a lot on the show, and how beliefs are created between the ages of 0 to 7. So those are the primary years. And what was that? What you called it something else?
The imprint period. That's right. So the imprint period happens between 0 to 7, and you're usually just absorbing all types of stimuli and information from family, from friends, and it sort of helps create this like shield of like identity for yourself in a sense, right? How do you think about the world? It's just being fed to you. You're not making any decisions at that point.
Right. I mean, you're 0 to 7. So like,
yeah, you don't get it.
New to the planet. So you don't know anything yet, right? And so everything that you observe, you are learning and you're taking on. And so you develop beliefs about the world, whether it's the world is magical or the world is a scary place. Like we develop all kinds of beliefs on the world, and that will take us throughout our life, and will, we will start to see how that plays out in our life story. And if you analyze your life, you will tend to notice that a lot of how you see the world and how you see people and how you do things is based off of something that happened to you in your childhood, whether good or bad, because triggers can be good as well. You could be triggered in a good way. Like if you're walking down the street and you smell a delicious cologne, and it might have been a cologne of a guy that you loved in like high school, because you can also develop, memories and triggers based, throughout your life. And that would be a good trigger, right? A bad trigger could be that maybe, this is like a harsh example to jump right into, but maybe you were sadly abused as a child, and there was a behavior that, or some kind of mannerism that maybe your abuser had, and you notice it in your partner, and maybe that comes up in your relationship now. And so so triggers can be of all sorts. But for the interest of this topic and today, we're just going to talk about, different relationship type triggers, and then how to, often, Ann and I were literally just talking about this, is that it can be really hard to establish what your triggers are. It takes a lot of self-reflection. And truly, I discovered, some new ones even recently. And so, but the best way that you can learn what your triggers are is literally by reflecting on arguments that you have with people. So let's think. Cool. There was one I wanted to share. Do you have one, Ann? Go for it.
Well, the thing is, before we even go into that, because I think specifics for people to understand, I want to add a little bit of context to what you just talked about in terms of, identity and beliefs, and how that plays into the triggers that get created without sometimes you even knowing, because if you understand the way that they get created, then it might help, spark, when I do this, it means that that's a trigger. Or when I think of this, it means that that's a trigger, right? So even if you don't know your triggers, this is kind of how you get to it. And I find that I was listening to an amazing talk by Catherine Woodward Thomas, who is a therapist, a relationship coach, and a world-renowned author. She's got several books out. And she coined the term conscious uncoupling most recently. If you get a chance to take a look at some of her talks. Yeah, loved it. I really love her perspectives on certain things, and specifically this one. She talked about identity, or the self, right? That you being identity, your identity, or the way that you think of yourself, is the self that you form in response to the traumas, like you said, that you went through. Now, traumas, there's a spectrum of trauma, right? And usually any kind of struggle that helps you, that affects you in and along your journey that helps you think about yourself in a different way, clarifies, what you want, who you are, what you need from relationships, right? Those are all traumas. Some are mini traumas, some are bigger traumas, right? But all of that struggle is actually very useful for you because it helps identify the self and your personal identity, right? And you might have inherited a certain identity from your parents, right? Like we were talking about the imprint period. But what she says is, and I love this, and one of my favorite wellness teachers echoes this, Abraham Hicks. If you get a chance to read any of those books, go for it. But the point is, we don't have to resolve traumas. There it is. That's a book by Abraham Hicks. Ask and It Is Given. Both Melissa and I are big fans. And I think it's just a great read. If you're looking for something to do in quarantine, kablamo, read something useful, But the point is, both Catherine and Abraham Hicks talk about the fact that you don't have to resolve the struggle that was, the traumas that were in our lives, because all of that is gone, right? Like that time is gone. That was one instance, those experiences you can't get back. But what you can do is to stop identifying and being defined by that trauma or those experiences that have shaped you in some way, right? You need to stop identifying with them, with the pain of that, and grow through the pain, essentially, is the message, to the new, to the next, to the realization that you had, right? So let's say you went through a really tough relationship, right? And you realize you have different definitions of respect.
Yep.
Right? Instead of thinking about all the gamut of ways that you were disrespected in the old relationship, the point is to be like, this is how I want to be treated from this moment on.
Yes.
That would be an example of looking to the future instead of living in the past, right?
Yeah.
I hope that's clear in that sense. So then she goes on to say, through that, we awaken to who we actually are, because the fulfillment of your vision is outside of the old story. How beautiful is that? You can't keep telling the same story, expecting a new result. You got to tell the new story, so that you're heading in the direction of whatever, you're looking for, whatever you've decided your new identity is, right? So I thought that was a fascinating way. And not only that, but she also talks about, if you do identify with the old story, essentially you're victimizing yourself, which, again, we're using like hot button words. I don't want you to take this very literally. I want you to think about how powerful that is, right? Like if you continue to live in the old struggles and the old traumas, which you are the only one in control of, you're the only one that's thinking the thoughts that create your reality in a sense, then, through that, we awaken who we actually are, because the fulfillment of our vision is outside of that old story. And we have to stop identifying with that and not resolving anything necessarily, but literally moving forward. That's basically it. I thought that was incredibly powerful,
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked a lot about stories last week and how like recognizing like, okay, that is what happened in my life. That was my story before. And from this moment on, I can change it. I have the power to decide how my life is going to pan out. And a lot of moving in that new direction, right, is becoming aware of these triggers and becoming aware of your belief systems so that you can create a counter belief that will be in alignment with this new story and this new life that you're trying to attract.
100%. And not only that, but so that's the process of self understanding, so that then the next step would be to communicate that, because what happens is, we go from relationship to relationship as we try to move on in life, sometimes we react to certain instances in unusual ways based on old patterns, right? And so you have to recognize the patterns. That's what the trigger is. That's how you start understanding yourself even better, right? You see the trigger and you don't take it out on the other person.
Yes.
This is where communication comes into play. That's why it was so cool to basically pair triggers and communication, even though it seems like they're two very significant conversations to have, but to talk about them at the same time makes a lot of sense, because you can't be an effective communicator unless you understand your triggers.
Yeah.
And then once you understand your triggers, it becomes incredibly important for you to share that with a partner, with a friend, so that they understand you better and they can know why sometimes, you can be upset about something that's seemingly, so insignificant, right? And you're not actually upset with them. You're upset because of things, right?
Yeah.
It's about you. It's not about them. That's the whole point, right? And so
Always.
to express that is so freeing and liberating and respectful in all relationships, you know?
Totally. I just remembered a hilarious trigger that I'd love to share with you guys.
I love it.
Down? Okay. So, wait, no, I want to see your reaction, Anne. Put it back on you as well. Okay. So,
in all of your glory. Yeah.
I have never told, I don't think I've told anyone this before. Okay. So, okay. So, all right. So, just to preface this, I realized that this had to do with my dad. So this was like down the line. Okay. So I had this weird request of like all of my boyfriends, not even all, it was more like kind of like a test, which is really interesting. So basically I was like, I don't know if you did this, Anne, but like as a kid, because like we're performers, did you ever like sing or like act like near your window and like kind of like wish someone was like watching and you had like an audience? Did you ever?
Oh, I would full on do it on the bus. Like I didn't even do it by the window. I was actually telling the story the other day because my grandfather was in the military. He was all about singing and dancing and like, you know, pride and you know, like marching songs and things like that, right? Not like but I did it all the time. Like I would perform for people on the bus, you know, I would perform for people on the subway, like I would just sing in the street. Like I did that all the time. Yeah, I love attention.
Well, okay, like so I just like I don't know, I just always would do that. And it's funny because I've bonded over with a couple people over this in particular, over doing that. There's like a lot of performers that would do that. But anyways, I think I would always just like wish that like a boy was like watching and like they they were like amazed by my singing voice or just like dumb shit. And so hilarious stuff. What?
So Disney princess of you, like a true Disney princess, you know?
That's why I'm a Disney. Exactly. So anyways, this isn't even correlated now that I think about it. It's kind of is, but okay. So I just like, it's along the same lines of this. I like wanted a guy to just like show up on my doorstep and like surprise me. This was something that like, I was so like, oh, can you please just like come and like show up on my doorstep and just like surprise me someday? And hi, Tony. And so, yeah. And I would ask all of my boyfriends but like none of them would do it. And it would almost, and when I, and now that I think about it, like,
you asked them to do it and none of them would do it. That I'm sorry, that didn't mean to laugh, but that's so cute.
No, it's so hilarious because like, it's just like, the thing is, I look at him and be like, that's so, you're crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why did you someone, but like, these are like the narratives that like, I would like think, and I would, and even still like, now I'm like, it's such a silly request, but but there's a deep reason as to why I was so like, I wanted someone to do that. And I'm just thinking from the perspective of these guys are like, what's wrong with her? Like, why would she want it? And they would never do it. Like I had 3 boyfriends that I had asked of it, and like they wouldn't. They never, and they go, oh well, I wanted to, but then something happened. Like they would always have an excuse. So, anyways, I eventually realized that it was kind of tied to my dad and how like, because he didn't live with me and like he didn't he didn't come to like a lot of like my singing gigs or like, you know, things. So like I just like I liked the element of surprise as someone's, I don't know, I guess maybe like seeing me when I don't know if it, pardon?
In your element. Seeing you in your element.
In my element. Yeah. But I just kind of just like wanted, I don't really understand. Yeah, okay. The point anyways, I'm getting like, I'm just like thinking about it while I'm talking about it because I'm analyzing it from like a different perspective that I ever had before. My brain is just like, it works in many different ways.
Love it.
So yeah, so I just like wanted someone just to surprise me, and it definitely came from my dad and like just wanting him to like just show up on my doorstep and just like hang out with me, and that really isn't like in his character. Like he wouldn't do that, and often like when I would be sad, he like just wouldn't show up, or like he often like wouldn't answer the phone, and it was just, you know, very hard on me growing up. and feeling like he just didn't want to deal with me. That was like a constant thing. And so, you know, when I would be sat on the phone, I would hope that like that boyfriend would just show up and just like show that he cared. It was that what was deep rooted was that I didn't feel cared for unless they did something like that, unless they just showed up. And so when I really analyzed it, I realized, oh, it's because I want someone to go out of their way for me. Just showing up and surprising someone when maybe you have to like, you have other stuff to do is going out of your way for someone. And that's something my mom would do, but my dad would never do that.
Right.
And so me wanting that stemmed from that. And because I associated someone going out of their way for me as someone caring about me. So
Wow.
once I had realized that, I was able to like effectively communicate it. I was able to tell my now boyfriend, look, I don't know why, but it's something that really bugs me that or I do know why. This is something that really bugs me that my past boyfriends would never do. And I truly like, it makes me feel like they never really cared about me. And I know it's such a silly request, but can you just like surprise me one day? And then he did. And you know, and we're still together 3 years later. And so, and I think, but there's a correlation in, I think I was able to communicate that to my exes, but not in the way that I was with this one, being like, I know that it's silly. It may sound silly, but to me, it makes me feel like you care about me, and it'll make me feel, you'll get a lot of points for like, I would just really love if you could do this one thing for me just once. And he did. And so I don't know if it shows that my exes were bad in any way, because they weren't. They were, you know, I had a lot, you know, especially the one that I was with for about 3 years, when I was like 22 to 25. He was amazing. He was a wonderful person. But I wasn't able to effectively communicate why I needed it so bad that he wasn't even able to, like, I wasn't even giving him a chance to truly be able to like fully understand and like actually take the initiative.
Sure. Yeah. I actually think it's a bit of a combination, to be honest, because even as you're talking, I'm like, I have a feeling that when you're in the right situation with a person that actually cares about you, they're going to try to understand, right? It's not even like, even if you don't understand, they're going to try to, and they're going to ask questions, and they're going to dig, and they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure out what you need or what the version of it is, right? I think sometimes when you know what somebody wants and you don't do it, there are various reasons for that, but like, you know.
That's very true. I totally agree with that, because I would say more than ever, I've never had a boyfriend that goes out of his way and like really cares about my needs like this one. You're right.
100%. I feel the exact same way. And I think that there's something to be said about, you know, being in a situation. John Gray calls this, the author John Gray, who's also a relationship expert. He calls this a soulmate relationship, right? Instead of a role mate relationship. When you actually find a soulmate, somebody who cares about your emotions, like your emotional world, more than, you know, the basic needs of like the basic male-female roles or dynamics that can be established within a relationship, right? When we're talking on the soulmate level, we're talking about emotional stability and emotional happiness, right? And health. And I think that when you have a partner, whatever it is, male, female, whatever partner you have that cares about your emotional well-being, they're going to ask the right questions, they're going to dig deep, and they're going to try their best, you know? So whatever their version of singing at your window or catching you at, you know, at the window is, catching you performing at the window, they're going to try it. They're going to attempt it, right? Maybe it's not the vision of what you had, but at least they're going to do their best. And I think that that's enough in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
But I love that. I think that's such a cute, you know, I think that's amazing, you know?
But truly, it was a big trigger of mine. Like, I genuinely felt like they didn't care about me because they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't show up at my door. Like, and because there's just, it's silly, but such a small request. Like, it's not big. It's not like I was like, please buy me a diamond ring, otherwise you don't love me. Like, you know, like, it's like literally like, can you just like one day, like this week, like just show up and like surprise me? Like, you don't even have to bring flowers. Like, it's not, you know, there wasn't even anything more than that.
I feel like, so here's the thing when you talk about communication, right? When you are specific about your request and you voice it to the person. So when you finally muster up the courage to say, hey, I know this might be a little weird, but it's vulnerable and it makes me feel vulnerable, because being able to voice that is vulnerable, right? Vulnerability is strength, everyone. If you follow the you know that.
We're in. You taught me that, funny enough.
Absolutely. And so because vulnerability is strength and you're able to voice it, if your partner, with the clarity of communication, right? When that clarity is in the mix and your partner doesn't do it, I think that you have reason to feel unsettled in many ways, right? That's kind of how we think. It's like we developed language as human beings so that we can tell each other what we need, right? And if I clearly articulate what I need and you still don't do it, and it's a deeply rooted need, right? Like, especially if you say it in a nice way. So tone also makes a big difference. I find sometimes, you know, a demand versus an ask are two very different things, right? And it has everything to do with tone. So if you ask it nicely and give the person the option to participate at their own pace and in their own way, and they still don't do it, something to think about. You know what I mean? If you demand it of them, I usually say like, well, you know,
I have something to add to that. You're so right about that. Mm-hmm. But in what, you know, even deeper than that, tone, I think is so females are like really quite intuitive and they are listening to tone and whatnot. But with males, John Gray talks about this, about how phrasing your questions a certain way will also determine whether they think that you have asked them of a request or whether there is like slightly guilt tripping them in your request. So I'm gonna elaborate on that. So there, actually, I have the book with me right here. He talks about would you statements over could you. So a lot of people don't know this, but this is highly effective and works in my relationship. And I use it actually across the board with all gentlemen. That men respond to would you as opposed to could you a lot better. And the reason is actually
how people respond to that. Do you know what I mean? I honestly think it might not even just be a male-female thing. I extrapolate it to everyone.
Sure. I think you're right, definitely, because we all have masculine and feminine energy for sure. It's more that I meant in the sense because I've only really practiced it with guys, but you're so right. Like certainly when you ask someone, so let's could you pick up the kids? Guys tend to be very literal. So specifically if we're talking about guys, they'll go, well, I could.
Right. I've actually done that in the past too, though. I've responded the exact same way, like,
yeah. So have I, right? And so he talks about how if you say would you instead of could you, it gives the other person the opportunity to say yes or no if they want. But most often, if there's someone that loves you, they're gonna probably say yes, most likely. But if they don't, then you have to also honor that that's their choice and be on your way, right? But what I've found is that when I want something done and I say, would you take out the trash? Always responds to it well. Yeah, babe, sure, I'll do it. You know, and then it gets done. But if I say, could you, it actually, what I've noticed specifically in my boyfriend and I've noticed in my dad, I've noticed in my brother, because I perform experiments on everybody. And I've noticed.
No kidding.
What'd you say?
I was like, I perform experiments on everyone. Insert evil laugh. No.
I do, because it's fun. You know, life is fun. So, and I through saying something one way, it like actually alters their energy. Like I have noticed in all three of them being like, they'll be like a little bit stiffer. They'll be a little bit, there's like a sense of like annoyance. And I think maybe the could you has to do with something. I mean, they feel mothered a lot. So like, I feel like that it kind of stems from males, you know, not wanting to be mothered. And so if you say, would you, that gives them the opportunity to actually, you know, decide for themselves as opposed to like, could you take out the trash? Well, yes, I can, obviously. Like there's like there's a bit of a guilt trip in it a little bit with the could you statement. Anyways, I've just noticed how much people respond to it differently. Sorry?
It's an expectation, right? So when you say could, it's a singular, you know, I'm expecting you to do this. That's kind of how you could take it. But if you add the would in there, again, it gives the option, whichever, male, female. I think it's respectful to give the person the option, right? To say no, but then it gives you the option to just say, to make your case afterwards as well, further, right? So yeah, I love that. Options all around. Options better than definitive. Like when you make a demand of someone, I think it never goes the way you think, because none of us, the basis of this is freedom, right? Like every human being likes to have the freedom of choice. Truly, whether that's being restricted wherever you are around the world right now, whether, your government is restricting this of you right now, you know it best, you know it even more, how much freedom is valued across the board, universally in humankind, right? So I think that it's really, really powerful to just give choice, period, and to not make demands or expectations, to not impose yourself on others, but to collaborate, like you open the dialogue, it's an offering. That's what would means to me, right? You're offering the opportunity for them to do something nice for you.
Yes.
And I think that at the core, what that speaks to as well for us human beings is we want that. Like we want to be helpful to one another. Like we want to do nice things for each other. And I think that giving the option makes a big difference. Not only that, look at this. We have some really interesting comments right now. The beautiful Lucy Lenz says, I am like really aware of what triggers me. I just don't know how to avoid them. Like I'm not in a relationship because I've developed that belief that I won't be able to get into a relationship before getting over the trauma. Mm-hmm. So I really respect that answer. And I think that the most helpful response to build upon that is this notion that the past can't be undone. So for you to try to remedy the trauma is kind of like, honestly, and I hope you hear this in the way that it's meant, in a helpful way, it's a waste of time, because trying to fix a broken pipe, for example, is a lot harder than building a new one.
Yeah.
And, I feel like in many ways, you don't want to tear things down. You want to build new bridges. You want to build better ways of expressing yourself. You want to build through communication and with the help of communication, fresh new beginnings, as opposed to trying to undo something that can't be undone, that in and of itself is part of a process that helped you clearly understand what you need further, right? And what's important to you in relationships and how to overcome whatever. So we can't continue telling the old story of the past. That's kind of my first thought there, So although I totally hear you and respect and understand how you're feeling, and it's so natural, it is so normal for you to feel that way, you can't undo it anyway. So let yourself off the hook there, It's not the end of the world that happened. It sucks, but you don't have to. In order to have beautiful relationships in your life, you don't have to undo anything. You just have to be open and calm and find ways to accept what happened and to integrate it into your life, That's kind of what
I totally agree. And just to add to that, I would say the best way to heal from trauma, honestly, and Ann and I have talked about this a lot, is to connect. It's really when you get into a relationship where you're finally with someone, when you're with someone who truly just like allows you to be who you are and accepts you, all of this old stuff, like the trauma, does come up to heal. Like that's when it comes up to heal, when you're in that kind of relationship. And Ann and I both experienced that in our current relationships, when they're first starting out, like for sure for myself, all that old stuff came up to heal. And so, I think that, but the only way I could have done that is through connecting, because through connecting, do you learn so much about yourself, right? It's like what we always talk about, that everyone in front of us is a reflection of what is happening inside us. Everything everyone says, everything you hear, everything you see, it's a reflection of what's going on. So if you can realize that, and tell yourself, like, and just know that, like, when you're in a relationship and like, or when even just with friendships and you're connecting with people and you're sharing and, and you're going to continue to learn more about yourself. And through that is how you're going to heal.
It's interesting. So I got to tell you, it's remarkable that it takes a tremendous amount of courage to connect. And I love what Melissa's saying. Sometimes when we've experienced, like, trauma is a very broad term. So for the purposes of what we're doing here, I don't want us to focus on traumas that are like, like life-changing, for example. Let's think of trauma as struggles, right? Personal struggles. So however you take it, but I don't want this to affect, depending on, different levels of mental health that we might be addressing right now. I don't want you to be triggered by this conversation in any way, right? Take what we say with a grain of salt, but connection truly is the way to healing. And also, sometimes when you have experienced something that's traumatic and difficult to talk about, you don't even know, like you, in your head and in your experience, you learn, because this is our survival instinct, to compartmentalize that particular difficult experience and sort of, in order to look beyond it, right? Like you can't continue to look at something that hurt you deeply or continues to hurt you deeply, because you can't function, right? Like when you're in that mode, it truly does affect your life, right? So our brains are this incredible mechanism that helps us compartmentalize so that we can move forward. But as we move forward and we meet people that make us feel truly comfortable about ourselves, like Melissa said, and accept ourselves for who we are, without even realizing it, it becomes safe for us to open up and start connecting. And what was remarkable for me personally, and I consider myself a pretty self-aware person. I'm not saying this in any way to be like, oh yeah, I'm working at this every day. I'm a very intuitive person and I'm a very self-aware person. And it's wonderful to know that even, difficult things that I went through in my life are healing at the moment, because when you have somebody that sees you struggle, right? And you've learned different coping mechanisms to get rid of that feeling or to hide that feeling or to not address specifically a certain trauma. When you have somebody that you're connecting with that can see you and just open up the conversation and put it on the table, like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? You want to tell me, talk to me, like, tell me what's going on, and making it safe for you. Like, here's an olive branch so that even if this might be a difficult conversation, it's safe for you to address it. It's safe for you to talk about it, right? I'm here, and however long it takes, I'm going to wait until you tell me what's happening, because I can read your body language, and your body language is telling me that something's off, right? And so when you're in a situation, when you allow yourself to connect to someone and they can see you for who you are, you're allowing, them to pull out of you certain things that, because of struggle, are difficult to talk about, and with practice and with time, it becomes safe to sort of even bring that to the table and talk about ugly things with people, and that's how we help each other heal. Like, that's how we help each other realize different things. You notice that when Melissa was telling her story, she was saying, oh, and then I thought of this and I realized this, I realized that. You got to give yourself a chance to realize. And if you don't connect or communicate in any way, if you don't have that, not because you're bad at it, but because sometimes we need help to come out of our shell, to come out of a trauma, in a sense, right? Sometimes we need inspiration, and we need to feel safe in order to give language to those feelings that we don't even ourselves understand sometimes, it becomes really powerful. And the only way to it is to allow yourself to connect, that's why I wouldn't be worried, obviously don't treat people poorly, because sometimes hurt people, right? So if you're still hurting from whatever experience, you might inadvertently hurt someone else. But even if you do, like, the worst thing that can happen is that you apologize for it and be a good person and explain, or at least, again, that opens the door to communication again, and say, listen, I do this. I hurt people. I push people away because I'm hurt about this, right? You wouldn't even know that until you try. So get out there and connect, peoples. You know what I mean? Oops. I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? There's things. I'm pressing buttons here. I got so excited. I'm pressing buttons, and I was like, oh. There was like, burp, 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 burp. Yeah, I love that. I truly, truly love that, Melissa, the idea of connection. And I don't think that if you allow yourself to connect, there's anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, you made a lot of like amazing points to add to it. And while you were talking, I realized that certainly that is one way, right? Is being brave, and getting into relationships so you can learn about yourself. But also, I just want to put this out there, and I know, Lucy, because you're a part of our streams, you have heard this a number of times, but also listen to yourself, because actually, maybe you aren't supposed to get into a relationship right now. Like, maybe you are supposed to just, sit with yourself and, just kind of focus on you and meditate or whatever. And maybe right now you're supposed to make friendship connections, right? Like, cause I'm sure you're still connecting, whether it's like in a relationship, right? Or not. Maybe specifically in that area, you're just not supposed to right now. You're supposed to, learn some lessons in friendships, and you're supposed to, just be with yourself and kind of, I don't know, maybe your lesson right now is to learn to be okay alone, or be okay, be okay alone, I'm going to say, because even when you're in a relationship, you're still alone a lot. Like, you're going to feel like loneliness is going to come up. And I think actually that is a big trigger for a lot of people. A lot of people really struggle with being alone. And thankfully, actually, that's never been my thing, but probably because I didn't have many friends growing up in elementary school. And so I was alone all the time. So that wasn't, that triggers. Pardon? It's yeah, I was going to say that's one of your triggers, right? Totally. So I think, so everyone has a lesson to learn all the time, right? We're always learning new things. And so maybe that is what your lesson is right now. Maybe you're learning to be okay alone, so that when you find that perfect person eventually, or that person that's in alignment with your needs and wants, that won't be a lesson that'll come up then. So you just don't know. But certainly, like we always talk about, tune in and reflect on what feels right for you. And that'll always give you the right answer, because we can tell you what has worked for us and what we have read and whatnot, but ultimately you know what's right for you.
Totally. I will say though, I think we touched on something very, very important, because connection, the essence of connection, which all it means is an exchange of energy, right? It doesn't matter if it's romantic, friendship, whatever, is kind of like at the heart of humanity. Like, that's why we're here. We're here to connect, in various ways. So even though I think that it's very important and everyone's different, and we all have different comfort zones, I guess, with that, and different needs about, space and time and whatnot. I think it's important to note that humans are communal creatures at our core. And so sometimes when we're going through struggles, especially, right? And I'm very guilty of this. Like, I have a hard time, because I'm a positive person and I want to focus on good things in life. And, sometimes I just step over the hurdle. I jump over the hurdle instead of like really looking at the hurdle, and trying to break it apart and whatever. I just go, that's fine. And then it affects me later on in life in a weird way. Right.
Right.
But what always helps to make the realization of whether I jumped over the hurdle or hit the hurdle head on is having another person to talk to. Like, regardless of what capacity it is, we are communal creatures, right? Yeah. Isolating yourself, and it's ironic that we're all in, various states of self-isolation around the world. Isolating yourself is oftentimes very detrimental to your mental health. And again, you got to listen to yourself, and you got to, but complete isolation is just not our nature. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is not reaching out even through social media or through whatever, right? Like, getting engagement, getting an exchange of energy. The exchange of energy is very normal. It's our baseline. It's our lifeline, The exchange of ideas flow, the idea of flow. Things have to flow. And usually what happens when you isolate yourself, you tell stories, right? And it's very easy to tell very critical stories about yourself unless you have somebody to bounce off of that says, what are you talking about? You're nuts. No, stop being so hard on yourself. Our tendency is to have negative self-talk oftentimes until someone else pulls you out of that from whatever, from a distance, from but connect. Don't sit there and just tell your own story. Just get input from, other sources, make connections, and that's life, man.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the irony of someone that does talk that way and isn't aware. They always have other people around them that talk like that as well, and is super negative, because that's what they've attracted. However, though, if you become aware to it, then you can start trying to attract people that are more positive around you, and then you'll start to see that contrast, and then you'll see, and then people will call you out on it. Like Ann and I both call each other out on it sometimes, and not even really, because we don't. I feel like we're at a point where we've practiced it so much, so we don't even need that anymore. We kind of just already know when we're in that sort of state. I need to talk better, but yeah,
it still helps, to have a friend in your life that sees you for who you are. Even if you're struggling, it helps to have somebody else just be like, are you okay? Like, talk to me about it. I'm here, like I'm here for you. And this is all kinds of relationships, right? And the other thing that I feel like it's a really good time to touch on right now is the idea of what makes us feel safe to connect and open up with each other. And for me personally, I think that when I know innately, I just want to share anyway, right? Like, it's easy for me to share. But when I know that whoever I'm speaking to doesn't have rigid, judgmental attitudes and beliefs and tendencies, it really helps me to just be free in my communication, right? I think that, in today's society, the topic and the notion of judgment and opinion has become, huge, like has become to the forefront of our, the way that we interact with each other. We're encouraged to give our opinion. We're encouraged to have an opinion about everything. We're encouraged to speak our own minds and be our own selves and be independent. None of that is bad. However, the other side of it is, right, that oftentimes, we see the world through our own lens, but I want to surround myself with people that don't critically look at every decision I make as if it was their own, or,
Yes.
Like, don't be judgmental, and creating, allow people to be who they are, and don't harshly look at it from an outsider's perspective. Don't harshly put yourself in their shoes and judge what they're doing, right? That's when I feel like I can communicate and connect and be open with open-minded people. Yeah.
Totally.
Something to be said about that.
That is such a powerful, it's such a powerful thing that you just said, but, and I think it's because people have heard that their whole lives, like, don't judge, like that. It's almost, that people are almost numb to understanding it because they've heard it so much. And it's something so powerful that I really give a lot of time and energy to think about. And on the Spreading Love calendar, if you guys don't know, I create this monthly task calendar that has little things that you can do to reflect on yourself and to give love to yourself or the people around you. And anyways, one of the tasks that I've been putting on recently is to spend 1 hour, just 1 hour, in non-judgment.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then great. But people don't realize how judgy they are, but it comes from a space and a place within them where they're being judgmental to themselves. If you're judging someone else, it's always reflective. I was just having a conversation about this with my boyfriend about someone that we both know, a couple people actually that we both know, that on the weekend we were chatting with them, and they are just so judgmental. And then we had a moment where we were like, what does that say about them? And then we kind of both realized, oh, what they're saying to me and they're judging me, if that's just their own. And we were able to kind of figure out the triggers because we know them so well. And so it just, I also and I've kind of distanced myself from these people because of the same thing that everyone that's really in my life 24/7 that I talk to is they all actively try to allow people to be as they are. And that truly is what love is, And so you're right. That's exactly what I would say about myself. The people that I surround myself with, and the people that make you feel safe, personally for myself and obviously you as well, is someone that just, allows you to be you, judgment free. And those are the people that you're going to find a lot about yourself when you're around them, because you'll able to just freely be yourself, and then they'll call you out on stuff.
Yeah, and well, the tricky part is this, right? And I want to be very clear about this, guys, because we're not talking about, hey, don't judge, right? It's everyone judges. Truly, it's the spirit in which you judge It's the intention behind the judgment, right?
Definitely,
That
yeah.
we need to pay attention to, right? And I think that that's so important because we all make judgment. We all make choices, right? Every single day we make choices. We look at things, we go, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or sometimes, but I'm not going to say that to the person's face, right? Or I'm not going to like go out of my way to hurt someone's feelings with my judgment. I reserve my judgment, you know, and then I will express myself with diplomacy should I need to, right? Yeah. But I think that a lot of us don't see that as an art. A lot of the people, you know, the art of diplomacy, like a lot of people just, number one, there's two camps is the way that I see it. If you want to speak your mind, there's always those people that are so strong-minded. They're like, well, this is my opinion. This is what I think. What's your problem? You know, like, yeah, well, if it hurts you, I don't know. I don't care, but I'm allowed to speak my mind. It's my right in my First Amendment. There's a lot of Americans, right? It's a very Republican trait to give you
a very Italian trait too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But to give you like a tangible example, right? Well, it's my right to express my opinion, right? There are people right now protesting in Toronto, for example, protesting, you know, licking statues and things, saying, you know, I can't get the coronavirus or you know, I don't like the current lockdown measures, whatever. And look, I'm licking statues and I'm not getting the coronavirus. Like that is how I'm going to reserve my judgment because you're allowed to express yourself the way you want. But that's just stupid, people. And yes, that is my opinion. But the point is, I'm not going to go to the person's, you know, I might. To be honest with you, I might go to their face and be like, yo, that is just dumb. Don't do it. And that's also my right, you know. But there are those people that, again, without really thinking things through, take at face value the ability to express yourself as a right, as a forceful thing, right? Cool. I prefer people that try to be open-minded because that's what it means and remove yourself from just your opinion and look at it from a bigger, broader perspective, right? So to what end? For a greater purpose. Like if you actually think about the greater good and you're not just so self-centered that you just want to make your point and be right, if you care about the greater good, you're gonna look at it from different perspectives, right? You're going to try to understand other people's perspectives than your own. And I think that leads to less judgment. That leads to more kindness and caring between people. And also, I'm just going to put it out there, it makes you a more intelligent human being. It makes you learn much more about yourself and other people if you don't just, you know, rapid fire, spit out whatever the first thing that you're thinking of is, right? Like, take the time, absorb the information, let it simmer like a good tea, and then enjoy, you know, the communication and the conversation. That's how I see it. Mic drop.
But you know what? I actually was talking about trying to practice literally not judging. Like I understand that it is certainly a human norm. Sure. It is. It's a societal norm for sure. But Deepak Chopra, in his book, I learned this in the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Yep. He encourages you to actually go for like a walk and try to not judge anything. Just observe. Be in the present moment. In the present moment, there's not judgment. There's just, it is what it is. Look at things, hear, but don't even make a judgment and just see how you feel. Yep. And honestly, I am like that a lot of the time. I do actually live like that. I have a lot of moments where I'm just kind of like, I'm there. I'm just kind of hanging and I'm just observing and letting people talk. And there aren't any judgments going on in my brain. And honestly, I think that's why I feel peaceful a lot. I think that practicing that does create a lot of internal peace. So yeah, so it's like, I totally agree with what you're saying, but yeah, that as well.
Absolutely. And look at this. There's a lovely comment from just as it moved.
Yeah, we missed a couple of them. Morgan also, I just wanted to say hey, because she said hey with a heart.
Yeah. Where did it go? Oh,
it's in the beginning.
Yeah. Lucy says, okay, all of this really makes sense. And like, I know that just to get it from my head into my actions and emotions is much harder than I thought, which is why I'm going to get professional help. Excellent. Beautiful. Though I have to wait until September, no problem at all, you know, but it's a start, I guess. Very important. I thought I'd be able to handle this, but your response just made me realize again that I can't do that on my own. And you know what, sweetheart, the best thing that you ever said is, you know, I'm going to seek out help because truly there are certain things that happen to us in life that take time to unravel and even understand, right? And just speaking for myself, you know, I think about this stuff all the time. I think about mental health all the time. I think about people all the time because I'm an actress. I live it. I've developed tools, and not even that, but like I'm just taking the time to try to understand. But when I don't, I seek out the counsel of incredible friends. I have been in therapy before. I encourage you strongly to get help, to get someone like a professional that understands the process and can take you through the process of unraveling some of this stuff so that the whole process is less painful for you. And not only less painful, but when you take your time to do it the right way, it feels like it is that you can do it. Does that make sense? Sometimes we get discouraged if we try something and, you know, someone says something that really makes sense to you, but you haven't practiced it enough, or you don't have the tools to go on to the next step. You know, therapy is designed to help you get through that. Like, it is literally unraveling the process, right? Of how you develop and transmute and transform these difficult emotions, you know? And so when you're doing it the right way in that sense, and if that's the stage that you're at, it's going to help you. It's going to make you feel like you can do it. It's going to make you change in the long term for the better. You know what I mean? It's going to have a lasting change as opposed to just a temporary, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Right? I'm a huge supporter of that idea. And I hope that you go ahead and, you know, take your time with it and do it. And that doesn't mean that if you're asking for outside help that you yourself can't do it. It's just having that, you know, strong support that is effective, because, you know, what is more effective than therapy in a sense, right? It's just a helper on your journey that's going to be long lasting in a sense, you know? That's a lot. Can't go wrong.
And Lucy, I feel like you might also benefit from CBT therapy. If you don't know what cognitive behavioral therapy is, you can message me. I can teach you how to do it. But there's a lot of resources that it's a certain specific type of therapy where you could teach yourself and you can kind of help yourself while you're waiting to have like a therapist or to have talk therapy. That might be something that might be really effective in like the short term right now. And I mean, personally, I still use it, and I was taught CBT in 2014. So it's one of those ongoing things. And I've found that to be the most effective form of therapy. And so who knows, you might end up liking it as much as I do. But certainly I can, if you message me, I can help you learn it for sure. I'm actually putting together a little bit of a video talking about it. So yeah, I'll definitely share that with you.
That's so awesome. That's a great idea. Yeah. And the other thing too is like there's different types of therapy too, right? So like if you actually go to someone and you know, the more you learn, the better you are at anything, right? So the point is, like, I usually love to go to an expert source and then work from there, right? So that's why, if you notice, like most of the things that we mentioned on the show, these are like world leading experts that know what they're talking about, and that, you know, share really valuable information that has taken a lot of research and a lot of time to come to, right? And that's what I respect, you know. So good for you for, you know, deciding to sort of take a really important step and to educate yourself and to do your best to get a hold of this, you know, because it's important. You want to be happy. You want to be free. You want to feel light.
Definitely.
Stuff.
And that's the thing. Like, I have, you know, I was severely depressed and had a lot of, you know, anxiety and depression issues. And I have read a lot and I have applied a lot, and it has worked. So I would actually consider myself an expert within this area, because I do apply everything that I learn, and they do work effectively for me. So I don't have a doctor's degree, but I know what works, and I know what has worked for me. And I'm at a point where I'm going to start sharing it more. So yeah.
What I also love about Melissa, and for anyone, you know, she's not only one of my best friends, but literally someone that I could talk about anything with, you know, and she actually has this ability to get to the heart of something, right? And not only that, but once you understand like the source of what's bothering you, because until then you're just kind of grasping at straws, right? Until when you understand the source, then, you know, because of how well read you are, Melissa, you are able to give, you know, certain next steps, right? It's like, try this, or try this.
And then it's hard to myself. That's why. Yeah.
And it's nice because there's never just one way to address a problem, right? And even when you go to any type of medical expert, for example, right, they will say, okay, so first steps, this, let's see how this works on you, and then we reassess, right, after this period, and then we try something else, and then we reassess, and then we try something else, and then we reassess. And I think that, you know, it's so freeing to understand that no matter what you're dealing with right now, what you know you have to deal with, there are options for you to explore. And not only that, but if you find a way to become open-minded about those options and the fact that all of this is for your own good, you know, for your own well-being, that journey will become a lot more enjoyable, less suffering along the way, right? Like you don't have to worry about, you know, like, oh God, I got to go and do this and take care of this. It's like, you're going to be fine. There's so many different ways that you can approach this, you know, and get a hold on it. You're going to do this. You're going to be great.
Yeah. And like you should always experiment. You should always just, you know, try different things because you never know what will work for you. I think there's so many different tools, like Ann said, that, you know, something might be great for you that I might hate. So it's just, you know, we're all different. We're all unique individuals. And yeah, staying open is like the best way to be for sure. For sure.
You communicate your successes and your, you know, your attempts, I guess. I don't like to think of them as failures. They're just attempts, you know, like you're trying something out, you figure out whether it worked for you or not, and then you move on. That's, you know, as an actor, that taught me tremendous. That flexibility of opinion and open-mindedness served me very well, not just in my profession, but in life, you know? And I think that it's nice to just think about it that way, you know, to be open-minded in that way. Lucy continues to say, I guess I just feel a little lost lately. I had my last exam today and the pressure is now gone, obviously. And now I feel like I might be slipping into a hole because now I actually have time to think. Interesting. I see what you're saying.
That is really interesting. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's so interesting that that's what you wrote because of what I said at the beginning of the stream. I don't know if you remember about how your lesson might be to learn to be alone. So you just said it right there. So that, I think that is kind of your lesson right now. That is something that you're going to have to find your groove within, you know, being able to ignore those thoughts. You know what, Lucy, you might really love this author. His name is Eckhart Tolle. There is a wonderful book called The Power of Now. And it will teach you to understand that you don't have to listen to all of your thoughts. That actually you are not the person speaking, you are the person listening to your thoughts.
So good.
And what you just said, yeah, it is so good. What you just said, that reminds me so much of something of how I used to feel and think, and this book helped me a lot. And also, Eckhart Tolle did a series with Oprah, a podcast series. It's fantastic. I forget what it's called, but if you just look up Eckhart Tolle and Oprah, you'll find it. I think it's like 10 episodes where they go through each chapter of this other book that he wrote called A New Earth. And he also talks about these similar concepts. But I think you would really like that. You might learn a lot.
Totally. Yeah. And I also think that, you know what, like the other side of this is, you know, sometimes if you don't have the tools yet, if let's say we're talking about a trauma and you don't yet know how to explore it, I think that, you know, when you have the time, what helps me personally is like doing something, being active, right? Like go for a walk. Like don't sit there and be like, okay, I can feel that this is making me feel so shit. These thoughts are like, you know, bombarding me, coming at me. Don't sit there in it, right? Because it's just not going to be effective. It almost paralyzes you, right? Like you could just be like, ugh. So just get up, do something, watch your favorite show, watch a stupid cat video. I don't know, like do something, you know, so that listen to music, which I personally love, you know, don't let yourself go in the hole, girlfriend. You know, I don't like hearing that because it's not good for your soul. And then it doesn't, you know, inspire you to things that might be able to teach you about how to handle your situation. You know what I mean? That's what I mean by staying open. Put yourself in a position where you can be your own best friend and not, you know, that's what I would say to my best friend, right? Like they're like, oh, I'm feeling super frumpy today. Hey, you want to, you know, I know it's a little more difficult right now because we're talking about social distancing, but like it helps. Reach out. Don't just be in the hole alone, right? Sure. Being alone is one thing. Like being alone, enjoying your time alone is very different from being alone and in a hole, right? So when you feel alone and in a hole, oftentimes like other people, connection is your lifeline. You know, even if it's just somebody giving you a silly idea to watch a cat video, for example, right? Like I feel like that's still helpful, you know? So
the first thing that Ann said about being active and going for a walk, when you were reading what she wrote, Ann, that was the first thought that I had. So I think that was spirit speaking, and I think that was divinely guided advice. So Lucy, I think you should definitely maybe go for a walk.
I love that. I love that. That's so awesome. Isn't that cool how we just like, we're so there. Just as we're getting ready to wrap up here, people, there was some other cute little comments about communication that I think it might be a really a good place right now to share. Joanna Stewart says, communication is key. I'm not sure there's one universal way of communicating because it will always depend on both the partners. How lovely that is. Exactly. You need to know the person that you're communicating with to know what's effective for them, you know, how they can hear you. Because oftentimes, because we speak from our own life experience, right? Sometimes we're actually telling people how we want to be treated. In fact, we're always doing that. Always. You know? So sometimes, you know, it becomes equally as important. Melissa actually taught me this. John Gray talks about, right? Basically, knowing your partner and doing things for them to understand and feel heard and feel loved, as opposed to just things that you yourself knee-jerk react would want to have done to you in that similar situation. Yeah. Think about the other person and what matters to them, and then, you know, that's how you communicate in a sense.
Understanding their emotional needs, their core emotional needs, is what will help you. It's interesting because we've talked about this before about chapter 8, my favorite chapter in Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And do I even have it bookmarked? I'll just read to you. Basically, in this chapter, he talks about the different emotional needs that could be for each sex, but not that you don't have both of those emotional needs, just you have core emotional needs that sometimes are different. And anyways, he talks about how when you try to fulfill your partner's emotional need, there is an emotional need that you have that's in alignment with that one that will just naturally be fulfilled through you actually trying to fulfill their need. So you being selfless and trying to fulfill their need just magically actually helps them fulfill your need, and it totally works. I know it sounds a little bit wild.
No.
It works. It totally works. What I'm feeling like, so there's like literally a formula, guys, actually get this book. I'm not going to read it to you right now, but basically if you're feeling like your partner needs to be more caring towards you, what they need in reverse is trust. And when you start when you start being more open and receptive towards them and more trusting of them, they naturally are able to be more caring towards you. It's so wild, but it works. So anyways, being selfless, it leads to.
Absolutely. I also found something really lovely here that Joanna continues to say in terms of communicating. She says, this is Joanna Stewart, Joanna X Stewart, by the way, on Instagram. Friend of the show. Writing also helps us. So not just expressing ourselves, right? Like through language, but writing enables communication when people aren't good at expressing feelings or know each other in the best way so that they can adjust to what matters to the other person, right? Yeah. I'm not expressing feelings, she says, but if I sit down, take a pen, think, and calm myself down, I can. Isn't that fascinating? So that comes back to that self-awareness element that we love on our show, that, you know, how do you best express yourself? I know that sometimes the way that I learn, you know, is I need to hear myself say something. Like if I'm memorizing something or if I'm thinking about something, I need to hear myself. It's not just enough for me to write it, for example. I need to hear myself so that I internalize it that way. I'm an auditory learner much more than I am a visual learner or anything else, you know? that helps you know yourself better and in fact become a better communicator with other people, right? The other thing that I find fascinating within this is the fact that sometimes we think we're communicating. Do you ever notice, like, you know, if you are in a relationship with someone, for example, romantic or otherwise, and you know them pretty well, do you ever find yourself or catch yourself saying, like, well, they should know this about me? You know, like, they should have known that I would feel this way if they did that or whatever. You know, they should have known.
That's a female thing.
Sure. Yeah, I do think it's definitely a female thing. But it's funny because I find it universally, in a way, as a communicator, because I value communication so much. I think it's almost like a universal mishap that we all kind of engage in, you know, where we assume just because we've spent enough time with someone and they do know us and we know them, that they're going to pick up on, you know, that they're perfect in a sense, that they're going to pick up on this stuff. And now we don't have to talk about it. If we had one uncomfortable conversation, we don't ever have to address that again because now they know. People, everybody changes all the time, right? Like you, I, me, everyone changes. And so should the situation require another conversation or whatever, I think it's important to just address it, right?
You know what, though, and you know what? You know where I think this stems from? I think this actually stems from the fact that females are just so intuitive, and that a lot of the time we know based off of vibes that we're picking up, and we're just more I don't know. I don't even think I buy into the fact that males aren't intuitive, because I totally believe that they are. I just think females work on it a lot more, whether they realize it or not. And I think it stems from the fact that we because we're so in tune, and that we're picking up on vibes, or we're listening to vibes or whatever, that when we say like they should just know, it's because a lot of females would just know. We would just know by just like, you know, past conversations or just like the vibe or whatnot. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what's amazing though? Like I'm living with a person who is incredibly intuitive.
So too. Yeah.
And the thing that's wonderful is that's why to me, it's not even just a male female thing. I think it's truly an awareness thing, because it's not enough to just pick up on discomfort, right? Like how often do you sit in a room and it's like thick with energy, right? Like it's like, I'm looking around, but if you don't ask the question, if you don't have the courage, and it takes some courage to ask the question, like, are you okay? Is something going on? Do you want to talk about something? If you don't ask the question, and this is what I respect the most about, you know, my boyfriend and the way that we are interacting with one another, because sometimes, you know, I am upset about stuff, but I'd rather not talk about it. Because I know oftentimes, right, it'll go away on its own. It's not significant enough for me to address, but the fact that he picks up on it and he gives voice to it gives me the power to express myself and to get rid of it faster or sooner, or to have a deeper understanding of whatever it is that's bothering me, right? And I really respect that about that approach, right? Again, whether you're male or female, if you pick up on something, that's only half the equation. Giving it some kind of a voice, you know, or whether it's through writing, like Joanna was saying, or like however you express yourself best, you know, finger puppets. I don't know if you need that, just acknowledge it in some way and open the conversation in whichever way you can, you know, and address it. And I think it's so powerful. And that's the way that we help each other, A, understand ourselves better, and B, overcome certain hurdles or discomforts that, again, there's nothing wrong that they exist, right? But what's the point of having a partner or something, or good relationships to me? And this is a very personal thing. Good relationships are ones where we are navigating and growing together, right? Whether it's a friendship or romantic relationship or whatever, these are people that uplift me and help me progress within my development, my understanding of the world, my understanding of other people. These are the people I personally want to surround myself with, you know? And sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes these are hard conversations to have. Or, you know, depending on what happens in life, what mood you're in, what state of, you know, mental health you're in at different times. But, you know, my deepest friendships and the people I keep close to me, we can have hard conversations and it's okay. You know, we can have deep conversations and it's okay. In fact, most of my friends know, like I connect the best when we can talk about real life and stuff and without artifice, right? Like without pretending like all is well and everything's good and da 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 da, like, which is great to celebrate those things too. But you know,
Yeah.
you gotta have the courage to give voice to it. Feeling is only half the thing, you know. I respect the courage to open up that difficult conversation and say, you know, I can sense there's something going on. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I definitely didn't mean to say that it's just a female thing, because it's not. I want to just like make that clear. It's an everyone thing. But all I meant was that typically females were more in tune because they would practice into it. But now we live in a day and age where males, like John Gray talks about in terms of the soulmates, males are now getting more comfortable exploring their more not feminine side, but more getting more comfortable expressing themselves, which would be typically feminine side. But they're just more comfortable with exploring other sides of them, as opposed to kind of just like being, all about their like macho masculine side. They're more in tune with emotions, or they allow themselves to be more in tune, because I think nowadays we don't buy into this like big boys don't cry notion anymore. Like we don't tell that to our boys anymore. We tell them, actually, the big boys are the ones that do cry and allow themselves to feel.
It's called being a balanced human being.
Yes.
We all have access to masculine and feminine energies.
Right.
Because we're human beings, right?
Right.
In your now understanding of emotionality and, our emotional intelligence scale, like it is within all of us, like this, the duality of the male female energy, and the balance of it is intrinsic within our experience, like happiness and experience, positive experience of life. You have to have a balance between the two, right? And I think that's like, it's so nice to be able to encourage everyone watching to strive towards a balance between the two, because before, we're living in the age of awakening in a sense, right? Age of Aquarius for some of our, more astrologically inclined friends. And yeah, girl. and truly, it's important for us to acknowledge that, like, we do know better. We know more about the human experience now. We are more emotionally intelligent than we ever have been, and it's almost a responsibility now to encourage each other, male, female, whatever you want to identify with, to become emotionally intelligent, because you can, and because it's for your greater good and all of our greater good. The more you know, the more we know, the better we are.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? I also want to just highlight what Joanna said about writing things down, and I think that's so cool that you mentioned that you say things out loud, because I've never heard that before. I think that's really interesting because, well, I mean, I guess I kind of have, but like just the way that you said it gave me like a visual, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool that people do that, because I'm the same as her. Whereas when I am feeling really like a difficult emotion, I'm feeling really troubled by something, I absolutely have to write it down in order for me to make sure that I'm being as like precise as possible. Because I find that one of my personal flaws is that I will go off into a la la land and not make the most sense, or when I'm talking about things, sometimes I'm not the most clear, and especially when I'm highly emotional. And so I know that by doing that, I will be able to clearly, express what I am feeling. But also just kind of helps me see on paper how I'm feeling. Like cognitive behavioral therapy, like I was talking about, gets you to write things out so that you can see it on paper. Because often, sometimes, especially if we have distorted ways of thinking, like just distorted habits of thinking,
right?
Habits that we sometimes don't even recognize it. And so if you write it on paper, then you can kind of see it like, bright as day. Oh, that's very black and white thinking, or that you're catastrophizing that situation or something. So anyways, these are very like technical talk. This is very like technical wow, I can't speak anymore. It's 3:30, that's why. Sorry, the final thing I just wanted to say is, because she said that, in Men Are From Mars, one of the techniques that John Gray talks about to effectively communicate difficult feelings is he suggests writing a love letter, and I have found that to be highly effective. So and you don't even need to send it. you can write out how you're feeling in an angry tone. And then you'll find as you continue to write and you continue to write that you'll slowly get to a point of more balanced thought and maybe seeing that other person with compassion. And maybe then, you're able to go and reapproach the situation and, come to it from a more grounded, sort of calm place as opposed to, an angry place. Never, ever continue a talk with someone if you're really extremely angry because you might not see things clearly and you might say things that you don't mean. And so definitely, if you find that you're in that sort of headspace, like, ask to walk away, go for a walk, or do whatever you need to do in order to get yourself into a more balanced way of thinking so that you can actually approach them with compassion. That's a person hurting. I'm a person hurting, as opposed to seeing them as, maybe someone that could be attacking you right now. Right.
You know what, just to, before we wrap up, to add to that, I really am a big believer in, if there's a conflict, resolve it. Don't sit on it. Don't, because if there is a conflict, there are, like Melissa just said, two people hurting, right? So, how there's some people that, and personally, I find this to be an avoidant tactic, right? Well, F you, door slams, and then, one person leaves, and then let's say you don't live together or whatever, and maybe it'll take you like a week of ignoring each other and festering and sitting there with bad blood or whatever. Yeah. And then one of you reaches out and has the courage to like open the conversation and things get resolved. But what happens in the meantime, and I do believe that you need to take space, take some distance. When you're staring at a problem and it's getting heated, right? It's not going to resolve right away. So take some time, but don't sleep. Don't be mad at each other for days on end or sleep on it or whatever, right? Even sleeping on it sometimes it's necessary depending on the hurt and, the situation. But I'm a big believer in, please, from the bottom of my heart, with kindness, resolve an argument, right? Even if it means let's agree to disagree and eventually hug it out or something, when we can hug, social distancing wise. But there's nothing more detrimental to personal, self-confidence and well-being than sitting on a problem. And what happens is when you swallow your feelings and don't actually address and resolve something, it can sometimes have negative effects on you physically, right? You get a pain in your back or whatever, you get a migraine, you get, all these things, these feelings, especially if you're really upset about something, need to come out a certain way. And so it can affect your health if you don't address things and somehow come to a peaceful resolution. Again, it might just be agree to disagree. We'll never talk again. I'm kidding. But don't be that dramatic. I just hate people that, avoid conflict, sit on hurt feelings for weeks on end, and then spring on you once it's too much to handle, right? When you've already had it up to here with bullshit, spring it on you and become even more hurtful. And in the process, the stories that you tell will not be good. Because your brain is going to try to fill in the gaps with, what is wrong, tell a really bad story about your well-being and the other person, and the truth is just going to be much more diluted by the time you actually do address it. So deal with it, people. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah. And if you're someone that actually does do that, and maybe you do take a week to reapproach a situation, or yeah, if you are in any way how Ann just described, I would have to ask you as to where that may come from. Do you kind of because if that's the case, then I would have to ask you whether maybe you've always had a lot of chaos in your life and maybe deep down there's a core need for chaos in your life. And that's where we would decipher the blocks and the deep beliefs there, because I know what you just said, I know some people personally that are like that, and they tend to attract chaos in their life. And that if you don't want to resolve a problem, if you're not very good at resolving issues, there is some kind of deep-rooted core sort of habit of needing chaos around you in order to thrive. And often people that were abused in their childhood or just had any kind of chaotic childhood, they attract that into their life because they're used to it. That is something that they have, that's how they see the world. There's always chaos. So anyways, just something like that's something that I've thought about a lot actually recently with a couple people that I know that, they're like that. And like, I'm not like that. Why? Because I genuinely want joy in my life. I want to attract joy. And but that is a conscious understanding, and I'm consciously, choosing that. I'm my own deliberate creator, right? So
I think very well said. That's so well said, and intent. Like, I feel like, again, the people in your life, the relationships in your life should uplift. So when you sit on bad feelings, right? Again, it's not good for you. It's not good for them. It's not good for the situation. That's just period the way it is, And so you really should reevaluate if you find yourself in situations like that, A, how you address it, but B, if those people really genuinely need to be in your life. Some things don't need to be resolved. And that's the other side of it, right? Like sometimes it's not, I don't want to put myself repeatedly in the line of fire in a situation where somebody just doesn't, you just don't gel, like you just don't get each other that way, right? So I think it's also equally as important, to recognize that. But at the same time, I've always been one that tries to bridge the gap, right? To be like, to pacify. And I find that for myself, I have a very young looking face, right? Like I have a very youthful attitude to life. I think that shit honestly keeps you young. Like it keeps you vital. It keeps you, not harboring negativity and that kind of hatred, or hatred or negativity is like ingesting poison into your own body in a sense, right? Like you want to be free of that stuff, and sometimes the road to that is having the courage to open up difficult conversations and not run away from difficult conversations. I've had so many partners in my life. One was in the recent years, where I just couldn't understand the volatility and just the running away from a very basic disagreement, right? And what does that actually say when you run away and don't even want to decipher a disagreement? What does that say about you, I don't know. Like it says to me.
Yeah, right? We both reacted that way because we're both like, oh my God, no, we need to
never.
Like, and like, it's funny because in that moment we're kind of judging, but not, everyone can be however they want. However, like that for us, that makes us cringe because we're just not like that at all. Like we like to solve our issues and get to the root of it and feel good like that. Ultimately, we both have a conscious, we consciously choose to feel good every day, and we reach for things that make us feel good, and holding on to anger does not make you feel good,
Period. And that's actually so, and it sounds so simple, for anyone listening here, who listens to us all the time, like I truly, this is genuinely how I think everyone should aim to live life, with a light-heartedness, with a lightness in spirit, not heavy, grudgy, judgy, mentalities in life, right? Like to free yourself of that, even though, again, if you are like that, there's nothing wrong with you, truly, like it's such a normal aspect of humanity for us to judge, to go through life in those, to experience anger, to, go through disagreements. Diversity is the spice of life. And sometimes some people are spicier than others, it's okay, right? We're not saying that that's not all right. It's just that ultimately, how do you want to live your life? What kind of lifestyle do you want, right? And what Melissa's saying is to choose joy is actually to choose your personal happiness, period, right? And to make everyone's life better in that process, because when you're uplifted, everyone's uplifted, and we all get to share and experience the best in one another, and that's how I want to live life, you don't know how much time you got around here, right? And so you may as well just make it, maximize the best parts of it,
And you know what? On this note of effective communication and triggers, my boyfriend gets highly upset when he's hungry, and I have gone way over time. So I am going to honor that part of him. He has effectively communicated that need to me in the past.
I love it. That's
because I care. I am going to leave.
Thank you so much. Oh man, that is awesome. That literally makes my day. What better way to say that?
And you know what? Thank you to everybody that left birthday wishes. Thank you, Pierre and Lucy. Thank you for that. She said, this was awesome as always. I have a lot to think about tonight. I hope both of you have an amazing day and a nice start to the week. Melissa, I hope you have an amazing birthday. Thank you. And Anne, I hope you still feel the birthday love. Probably does. Thank both of you for being so amazing. Oh, thank you for being
Aw, how sweet is that? And look at this. Pierre Jason Kelly right away as well says, happy birthday, Melissa. Let's all take a moment, beautiful friends, because tomorrow is Melissa's birthday. And it's a really fun one. And you girl, I hope that this year brings you so much joy and happiness that you don't even know what to do with yourself. That's what I hope for you.
It honestly already has, honestly. There was some craziness in the first month, but ever since then, I have been reaching for joy, and there's been a lot of joy. So,
I love that. It's because you're beautiful, and so many more beautiful things to come. So on that note, our beautiful friends, thank you so much for joining us for tea time this Thursday.
That's right. And one sec. I need a second to bring up our outro.
Okay. So,
again.
Thank you so much for joining us, truly, for tea time, and everyone who commented and sent us their sparkly thoughts. We appreciate you.
We do. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please invite a friend to join in next week. We do this every Thursday afternoon at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Also, peoples, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment below with things that were effective, things that stood out for you, and things that you enjoyed about this conversation. And we will see you next Thursday, fabulous folks.
We love you so much.
Love you. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Bye.